Alison Sargent joins me on the set to take a look at the papers today. Hi, Alison.
Hi, Jeannie.
Now, you're going to start here in France, where many papers are reacting to an anti-Semitic incident that took place over the weekend during the last round of the Yellow Vest protests.
That's right, Jeannie. A group of protesters came across Alan Finkielkraut, who is a very well-known philosopher here in France. He's a right-wing philosopher. He's also Jewish. They verbally assaulted him. They called him a dirty Zionist, told him to go back to Israel. This came after a series of anti-Semitic incidents in France in the past few weeks. One of them you see on the front page of Le Parisien here. These mailboxes with a portrait of Holocaust survivor and women's rights icon Simone Weil were spray-painted with swastikas. Le Parisien's front page headline here reads, "Enough of this hate." France's communist paper L'Humanité uses that same image on its front page today. Their headline is a quote from the late Frantz Fanon, who was an anti-racist and anti-colonialist activist from Martinique. I like this quote. It says, "When you hear people speaking badly of Jews, listen closely. They are talking about you."
Now, this Jewish academic and real icon here in France has said that he will not file a complaint against his attackers, but he does want to know who they are.
That's right. The philosopher has given an interview to the right-wing paper Le Figaro, a paper that he regularly writes for. He describes the insults aimed at him as Islamist rhetoric. He says he sees it really as evidence of what he calls a hideous convergence of Islamist and far-right groups. Now, papers are reporting that at least one of the suspected aggressors was identified by the police as a member of a radical Islamist movement. France's left-wing paper Libération is calling for the attack to be punished with great severity. They say the Yellow Vests need to publicly denounce those who are, in their words, dirtying both the movement and the country with hateful rhetoric. And the paper points out that there are plans, in fact, for a nationwide protest against anti-Semitism to take place in France on Tuesday.
Now, staying with the French papers, Alison, they're also looking ahead to a summit on sexual abuse that's being held at the Vatican later this week.
Right. The Catholic Church is getting ready to face its demons. That's the front page headline from street paper 20 Minutes this Monday. Pope Francis announced the plans for this meeting in September after he visited Ireland, where he was pretty directly confronted with the church's history of abuse. It also comes after revelation in the U.S. that hundreds of Catholic priests sexually abused over 1,000 children in Pennsylvania. Libération writes that the Vatican is facing an unprecedented crisis as it gears up for this summit on Thursday. The paper emphasizes just how historic it is that some 100 bishops from all over the world are going to be coming together to talk quite openly about the sexual abuse of minors in the church. They say it's finally breaking the law of silence that has long ruled the Catholic Church, although Libération is skeptical that any major measures are going to come out of this summit, such as ending forced celibacy for priests.
And as the Catholic Church is tackling its problems with abuse, the New York Times has a really interesting article reporting that gay priests are worried that they will become scapegoats for the church's problems.
Right, this is pretty important to keep in mind. The New York Times writes that while studies have repeatedly shown that there is no connection between being gay and abusing children, many people continue to mistakenly link the two. The paper writes that many bishops and right-wing media blame the abuse on what they call the church's homosexual subculture, but the paper says this makes it even more dangerous for gay priests to come out and be open about their sexuality. According to the New York Times, around 30 to 40% of the U.S. Catholic clergy is gay. Less than 10 priests, however, have come out publicly in the U.S. And for the paper, the church's sexuality crisis, well, it's not just about abuse. They say it's about accepting that there are many priests who are gay and celibate and have nothing to do with that abuse.
All right, let's go now to the UK, where the debate continues to rage over the case of a jihadi bride who's begging to come back home with her newborn baby.
Right, her case came to light last week. We actually talked about it on Friday in the press review, and at the time she was pregnant. Well, she gave birth over the weekend. Her name is Shamima Begum. She's just 19 years old. Tabloid The Daily Mail calls her the new ISIS girl sensation. They write that just hours after giving birth, she made another plea to return to the UK, saying, "I'm just a housewife. People should have sympathy." She herself, though, has shown no remorse for her time in Syria. You can see another quote from her on the front page of another tabloid, The Daily Mirror. She said, "I had a good time in Syria." Meanwhile, The Guardian today is spotlighting another foreign jihadi bride who is in the same Syrian camp. This one is an American. Her name is Hoda Mutana. She does have regrets. She says she thought she was doing things correctly for the sake of God when she went to Syria. Now she says she realizes that she misunderstood her faith and wants to return home to Alabama in the United States. Of course, over the weekend, the U.S. President Donald Trump called on European countries to take back their jihadi citizens. So it will be interesting to see if Donald Trump is now willing to heed his own advice.
All right, Allison, just to wrap up now, something completely different. A group of firefighters who rescued a very large cat from a tree.
That's right, Jeannie. It's your classic small-town story of firefighters who rescue cats from trees, except for in this case, it was more than a large cat. It was actually a cougar. It was seen in a tree in a residential neighborhood near the San Bernardino Mountains in California. The firefighters tranquilized it and lowered it down with a harness. You can see that happening in this photo here. This photo was actually tweeted out by the fire department. No one was hurt in the incident, including the cougar. It was given a medical evaluation and released back into the wild.
All's well that ends well. Yeah. Thanks for that, Allison. Allison Sargent with that look at the press review today. You can also get a closer look, of course, at the press review more in detail on our website. That address, of course, is France24.com.